Well, why data prep is important? I bet most people who work with data science already heard about the concept gold in, gold out, or similar to this, but with the opposite of gold. Well, the fact is that this is the absolute truth when we are talking about data. Without knowledge about data, variables, and the data steps needed for a project, we will probably fall into a project that is not successful. Because poor data means poor models, which leads us to bad conclusions and generally the lack of business adoption. Not to mention the fact that working with poor data quality will impact directly in the time needed to finish a project. Bad quality data can make an analysis take months to be concluded, generally with a go and back situation. To start this lesson today, we are going to start with the principal tabular structure data format. The classical tabular data format is quite famous. We can think about a spreadsheet where we have a collection of observations divided into rows and columns. Rows representing here the observations collected historically, and the columns are our variables, or the behavior we are interested in collect in this period. If we want to predict something, we have to collect this information as well, and we will call the target variable as the answer for what we want to predict. But the target variable is not always necessary. And here we are going to cover a quick recap about modeling approaches. Well, we divided the modeling approach into two types. The first one is the supervised learning, that is the classical and the most famous method. That is when we want to answer the question what we want to predict, and we have an answer for this question in our data collected historically. And when we don't have the target variable, we call it unsupervised learning. The supervised learning is also divided into some different types of modeling. The first one, and the most famous, is the classification model. If we want to predict a condition, this is our target variable is something like true or false, 0 or 1, yes or no. Anything we want to predict that is filled with binary values, we are predicting with a classification model. In this example, here we are talking about fraud detection, classical tabular data set. So we have several different variables like transaction ID, customer ID, the age of this customer, gender for this customer. And at the end of all collected variables, we have the answer for, is it fraud? Yes or not. So here we can see that we have not only profile variables, but also we can collect variables related to the transaction itself, like day of week, the amount of value being considered in this specific transaction, etc. The second classical machine learning method that we have is when we have numerical or quantitative value as our target variable. So in this case, we call regression problem. And exactly the same way we showed in the previous example, we have several different variables describing the target variable that we want to predict. In this case, can be product, brand, category, specification, X, Y, Z, etc., etc. And we want to predict a price, which is a numerical variable that we want to predict to get a regression model. So depending on how we collect these variables, we have different units of analysis. The concept of unit of analysis is really important because the unit of analysis is where we define how the data set is going to be constructed. So in the two previous examples, we had the transaction and the product as our unit of analysis. So each row in the first data set is representing a different transaction. And for the second example, each row is representing a product with a different brand, category, etc., to get the expected price. Well, how the data set looks like before ingest into driverless AI.